Welcome to The Switch, not another podcast. The Switch is a collaboration between Baseload Capital and DNB, aiming to accelerate the green transition. We want our podcast to be a central hub for knowledge exchange within the fields of renewables and green transition. Hosted by Kristina Hagström-Ilevska and produced by Emil and Jacob.
All right, guys. Today we have SDCL, another investment company, and we have the CEO and founder Jonathan with us.
Yeah.
What are you curious about?
We had quite a lot, not a lot, but we had some investors here at the Switch, and I'm curious to know about him and his side of these investment stories. Who are they? What do they do? Are they different from anyone else? Or
I've heard that he's a very knowledgeable guy. I hope that he can explain quite a lot as well about how this works.
Yeah.
Energy sufficiency, actually.
Yeah.
What do you think, Jacob? What are you looking forward to?
I would like to know how they measure success, and I would like to know how we can use energy more efficiently.
Oh, well.
Those are my two curious questions.
I do believe that we're up for a good episode today, aren't you?
Yeah, I think so too. Should we roll the intro?
Let's do it. Here it goes.
He has 20 years of experience in international finance, infrastructure and private equity, as well as 10 years experience in sustainable investments. He is passionate about the climate and has a strong belief that we can make the switch. In this episode you will be educated how we can stop the energy waste, what small changes can make a big difference, and if he actually has a climate guilty pleasure. Let's give a warm Switch welcome to the CEO and founder of Sustainable Development Capital, Jonathan Maxwell.
Well, that's an introduction. What I more found on the website was a quote: "If it's not commercial, it's not sustainable." And that's where I would like to kick off this interview with you, Jonathan. What does that mean?
So when I started Sustainable Development Capital, so much interest and focus on climate, the environment, was focused on philanthropic investment, almost as if having an interest in climate, the environment, even clean energy in the mid-noughties, 2005, 6, 7, implied some sort of sacrifice of return, some requirement, even for subsidies and so on. My proposition, my real concern was that if this was going to be a movement and a market which was going to rely on either charitable or subsidized capital, that may have a limited runway. Instead, there must be economic, financial benefits that can be derived if there's going to be a market response, if the market is going to pick up the challenges, address them. There must be a financial payoff and a commercial outcome. And in fact, if we can focus on finding the commercially exciting, profitable solutions to so many of these very significant challenges, then that will create its own momentum. It's the basis on which shareholders can support companies to do things, to create profits. It's the basis on which investors can support companies, managers to make investments on their behalf. Therefore, if there is a commercial payout, if there is a financial return, that is sustainable. My concern was that if there wasn't, it's not. So to be taking it to an extreme, if it's not commercial, it's not sustainable. I'm sure I'm right, that the climate, the environment, energy challenges that we're facing today are also some of the largest markets in the world. Energy is worth trillions of dollars. Therefore, coming up with ways of investing more efficiently, more profitably, can create extremely interesting financial returns. And it's on that basis that it becomes autocatalytic, that you get a very vibrant investment market. And I'm pleased to say very, very large amounts of that have come true in the last 15 years. But I actually think we're just getting started. So if it's not commercial, it's not sustainable. If it is commercial, then the market can create momentum response. And you see, I think, a very, very optimistic future.
Yeah, interesting. How do you connect that statement to the vision?
So that's why I started Sustainable Development Capital. And I've been in the infrastructure investment sector for a long time, the best part of the last couple of decades. It was a brilliant place to be, coming up with and being involved with a solution, a financial solution that created investments for essential services without which society didn't function. But the big concern, like healthcare, education, and so on, but the big concern that I had in 2005, 6, 7 was that we were facing enormous environmental challenges. Climate, definitely, the big macro one, but other things like energy, water, waste, transport. And these are limiting factors on economic growth if you get them wrong. I was very interested in getting them right. So on that basis, I created this firm, Sustainable Development Capital, in order to answer your question, to help identify commercially exciting areas of these environmental infrastructure markets, and to mobilize capital into those areas that were going to be commercially sustainable, commercially profitable. And that is the essence of what Sustainable Development Capital was designed to do, which was to create, exciting, important, and enduring, long-term sustainable investment.
Do you believe that your company actually accelerates the green transition?
I think our company has really been trying to do a few things. I mean, it started off as an advisor and helping to accelerate, absolutely, by putting developers and fund managers together with investors. We did find some areas, though, that were completely underserved or almost completely overlooked, actually, by capital markets. We'll come on to it, I'm sure, but energy efficiency is part of the core focus of SDCL is probably the most sort of standout example of that. And I think in energy efficiency, absolutely, I think we've been an important perhaps leading investor in that sector, and we want to continue driving that forward.
What for people who don't know SDCL, what is it that you actually do?
Okay, so we're today we act as an investment manager, as a fund manager. So we have a series of funds that invest at various different stages of energy efficiency and distributed energy projects. So we can invest at any stage of the project development life cycle, coming up with ideas at conceptual stage, to putting systems and processes to develop projects. And then we provide investment capital to make those projects happen. And then we can own and operate those projects over their lifetime. What we do for our funds is we put capital to work in those projects. We ensure that the contracted returns are consistent with the investment objectives of our funds and our investors. And then we manage that process.
Can you give an example?
Yes, absolutely. So 10 years ago, we were looking at ways of making buildings more efficient. So we designed solutions to make buildings more efficient by applying something that sounds as simple today as LED lights in buildings, replacing old incandescent lights with LEDs. We worked with partners, put solutions together. Great example is we helped Santander Bank to retrofit all of their lights across the country by partnering with GE, who make light bulbs, LED lamps. Actually, we worked with GE to design the system. We funded the implementation of it, and we entered into a long-term contract to deliver lighting as a service. We've done that now. SDCL has over 2 billion of AUM associated with energy efficiency projects like that one, on-site generation systems where we've developed on-site combined heat and power, solar projects for end customers, and also distribution networks where we've helped create district energy solutions. The common theme, maybe if I can just say this, the common theme behind everything that we're doing, and you mentioned this quote, if it's not commercial, it's not sustainable. Maybe just to define what we mean by sustainable or sustainable development.
Please do.
But we really feel that that's synonymous with resource efficiency.
Efficiency.
Yeah. So doing more with less, creating better economic productivity, better growth, better performance. This comes back to the point, if it's not commercial, it's not sustainable. The flip side to that is if you can be more efficient with the use of your resources, it costs less. It's less demanding on the environment, but it costs less. It actually can improve productivity and create better growth for countries as well as for companies. So it's on that basis that almost everything that we do everything we do comes from that mantra, which is, let's see how we can deliver a solution that's cheaper, cleaner, and more reliable, more sustainable, more efficient. So the bulk of our investment, to bring it back to what we do, goes into energy efficiency. That is probably the largest operating market around this concept of resource efficiency today. But there are other resources that we need to be very mindful of, as well as energy, which is at the top of everybody's mind, water, waste, and so on.
What do you believe that you contribute with to the actual green transition? What do you think that SDCL is contributing?
I think, first of all, I think it's opening up new financial solutions to old problems. So one of the major problems that we've looked at, for example, and that was mind-blowing for me 14, 15 years ago, is that if energy is worth trillions of dollars and everybody and everything depends on it, and if it's at the heart of the challenge, the problems associated with the climate change, but it's also such an important part of the solution. If all of those things are true, and you're nodding, so I think that you agree with me.
Yeah, I do.
Why did we waste most of it? So it's asking a question like that, why? And then trying to design solutions to that problem. Well, there must be an answer to the problem. So what are the solutions? And then we'll go the extra mile, even if we feel that there's a fundamental structural inefficiency, which there is in the energy system. I think the role that we can play is try and do something about it. The second question I ask after why is so what, or what do we do? How do we implement it? And on that basis, we committed ourselves to creating an energy efficiency investment program to help solve that problem.
Interesting. So with your perspective and your experience, what are some of the main problems of the current energy generation?
It's an extraordinarily inefficient and dysfunctional energy system.
That was not specifically optimistic, I see.
Well, the optimistic part of me, the reason I say that is because I think if we accept the problem, then we can start to come up with solutions. And I'm delighted.
I like that. I pulled the awesome button here. That's good. Awesome. There you go.
So, I think there are basically four ways. And this is one of the things that we've been sort of trying to think through and understand. And then we've got a chance of articulating and doing something about it. So there are basically four ways the energy system is so incredibly inefficient and dysfunctional. And therefore, there are solutions to the problem. So the first one is generation. So we know, Europe's just like everywhere else. 80% of Europe's energy is oil, gas, and coal.
Yeah, that's true.
The extraordinary feature of, let's say, pull out one of those, the gas market, particularly distinct from oil or coal, but it's the generation of electricity using natural gas is traditionally, and for the large part, is an incredibly inefficient process. You put, for example, 1 unit of fuel gas into a turbine, and at most half a unit of electricity comes out the other side. The rest of it's wasted as heat. If you're generating energy very far from where you need it, which is the way that the energy system has generally been developed in Europe and North America. So there are incredible inefficiencies on the generation side, thermal losses on the generation side when it comes to traditional energy generation.
So both costly and wasting.
Very high cost, very high carbon, and unreliable. What happens if the grid fails?
Well, we kind of have that situation right now, yeah. Right.
What if? So, there may be reasons why. Like the grid failed in America in 2012 because of Superstorm Sandy. Severe weather events last year in Texas in February, Louisiana in the summer. So weather can be a source of energy insecurity. So can war. So generation losses. Let's come back to your first question.
Yes.
Where is all the inefficiency? Second one, transmission and distribution. Let's bundle those together. Getting energy from the centralized energy system generators to where it's needed in town, for example. So you get significant transmission and distribution losses, almost irrespective of how you generate the energy in the first place, there are still losses that go into the process of transmitting and distributing energy as a feature. Now, there's a fourth area of energy loss, which is on the demand side. But I'm going to pause for 1 second because I want to give a concept of the scale of energy loss on the first three components: generation, transmission, and distribution. That it is huge. Most energy, actually, original energy, is wasted even before it gets to the point I was going to come on to next on the demand side. So well over 50%, up to 2/3 of energy, sometimes more, can be lost through those components: generation, transmission, and distribution.
What did you say? More than 50% of the energy is wasted.
Can be lost. There's a nuance here. Now, I think that was your red button, but I'm going to give you the maths. If you put a gas into a turbine, then you'll produce two things: electricity and heat. If there's nothing that you can do with the heat, then the heat is wasted. So a very substantial amount of energy is wasted at the point of generation, or can't be used, or is lost, let's put it like that. And then there are additional transmission and distribution losses. That number of about 2/3 of energy, original energy, that's lost before it gets to the point of use, is a number produced for Europe and for North America. A great example are the Sankey charts produced by the World Economic Forum for the United States, which show that somewhere between 2/3 and 70% of energy, original energy, can be lost or dissipated before it gets to the point of use.
Where does it go? Just go?
Mostly thermal losses. In other words, heat that you can't use. And then to some degree, transmission and distribution losses.
Whoa, that is scary. So then,
well, I told you that the good thing is that we'll figure out the problem first, and then we can come back to some solutions.
I'm ready to push.
Stay off your red button because I've got one more.
It's okay. I'm ready to push now.
Okay, it's gone from red to awesome.
Yeah,
excellent.
okay.
This is the problem. We have to think differently. The last point is on the demand side. So what happens? The energy is finally, whatever proportion of the energy has finally got to the building that you're in today.
Yeah.
Is your building using its energy as efficiently as it could do?
Well, I have to ask DMB. I need to ask.
So do you have the most efficient lighting system, heating, ventilation, air conditioning equipment, building management systems, controls, insulation? Now, in general, it won't come as a shock that most buildings are not perfect or optimizing the use of their energy. Somewhere between 10 and 20%, sometimes significantly more, of the energy that gets to buildings can be lost or wasted through inefficient lighting, heating, ventilation, air conditioning, and so on. So, you add it up in terms of come back to what I said before, generation, transmission, and distribution losses, a very significant amount of energy loss. And then more loss being used even if and when the energy gets to the point of use. And that is the problem that we're trying to solve, or at least come up with solutions to that problem. So there we go. So now we've identified what the problem is. What are the solutions? And there are, I'm thrilled to say, commercially proven, actionable solutions that can be delivered, have been being delivered for the last 10, 15, 20 years, that can be delivered today at major scale. And now part of that is we're already investing in through our funds, part of it are new projects that need to be developed, because I think we've now hit a watershed moment, particularly in Europe, which means that we have to figure out the solutions to these problems. The big question that we're all wrestling with is how to replace imported gas in Europe, wherever it comes from, but in particular from places that are war-torn at the moment. How do we replace gas imports? So that's the big question on the mind of Europe today. My proposition is not to say that question isn't important, but to say I put a question that's just as important is how we stop wasting most of it.
So there are actually two questions you're posing. How do we stop wasting, and how do we
stop wasting the energy? And so what are the solutions to those problems? And there are solutions to those problems using immediately actionable, commercially proven technologies and solutions. extraordinarily, this is also another factor. Going back to your initial quote that you played back to me, if it's not commercial, it's not sustainable. Solutions that are actually cheaper, as well as being cleaner and more reliable than business as usual.
But
what
okay,
do I need? Yeah.
Now I have to push this one. But if we have all these solutions, why are we not further along than we are today?
It's a really really great question. First of all, that I'm going to say that there are great solutions, but I'm going to give one point. I'm not talking about silver bullets, right? Because energy policy in Europe is not about silver bullets. It's about trying to create solutions, and we're talking about Ursula von der Leyen is talking about doubling down on renewables, which we should do. There's a lot of talk across here with difficult questions around what sort of generation, where do we get it from? Do we do more European gas? Do we do nuclear? Do we do offshore, onshore wind, solar, and so on? And the answer to all of those things is probably yes, and in the right way, right? So those are component parts, but so is energy efficiency, and so is distributed generation. You don't just do that, and it doesn't just magically search everything, but it does make a massive difference, and it is as important. My proposition is it's as important a part of the solution as new generation. In fact, I would even go one step further and to say, make sure that you do it first, so that when the new clean generation comes onto the system, it's not wasted. So to come back to it, without proposing that it's a silver bullet, which would keep me off the register, I'll see if I can get onto your awesome.
Yeah.
Well, so a number of potential solutions to the problem. So how do we focus? So let's start on the generation side. Generate energy close to or where you need it. You can't always do this, right? But where you can, particularly in industry, which uses huge amounts of energy, steel, cement, chemicals, plastics, and in large buildings, public buildings, hospitals, data centers, bring the energy generation closer to or right to where it's needed. Why? Well, we've gone through the physics of it. You will lose less thermal generation, and you will need to use less and therefore lose less energy through transmission and distribution. So generate energy where you need it, whether it's from natural gas, biogas, solar, whatever, ground source heat, the geothermal, whatever solution. First of all, decentralize.
Okay, decentralize, number one.
Big one. Second, reduce demand. So if you're using old-fashioned lights or incandescent lights, change them. If your heating, ventilation, air conditioning, refrigeration systems aren't efficient, make them so. So that's another component on the demand side. And then there's distribution. Sometimes it's not possible to generate energy exactly where you need it. So let's make sure that the distribution system, the transmission and distribution systems, are as efficient as possible. Let's move clean energy from one place to another as efficiently as possible. Biogas networks, district energy systems. So there are tangible, immediately actionable solutions to address these problems. And the beauty of these solutions, decentralization and efficiency, whether it's on-site generation, lights, or even distribution networks, is they're capable of being delivered in the next 6, 12, 36 months. Some of the very large clean energy generation that we need, definitely for Europe, will take 3, 5, 10, 15 years to generate at scale. Go back to what I said before. The energy system that we have at the moment in Europe is just like everywhere else. It's 80% fossil fuels. We have to reduce demand. And one of the big areas has been, and this is maybe slightly controversial if you don't mind me saying so, one of the big areas of focus has been the concept of asking individuals to reduce their energy footprint. It's a laudable, very good proposal that people should turn their thermostat down by 1 degree, and that would make a big difference. It would. But you know what? It would make a bigger difference if industry, buildings, and government actually stopped wasting so much energy. It's the institutions where there's a great opportunity. And it's also these projects.
Now I want to pull the awesome thing, because that's one of the most bravest things someone said, because it's very often that you push the problem to the individuals, but you're actually saying here that there's a big change that needs to be done on institutions, on government, on industries instead here.
Absolutely. I think this is an institutional problem with an institutional solution. I think it's the institutions, including the utilities, that need to deliver a better, cleaner, more reliable energy service to customers.
Wow.
You put the customer first, but we have to come up with the solutions for those customers. Absolutely.
So this is what you call energy sufficiency, right? And then in the end, it's quite obvious. What are the main benefits then for us all as parts of the society? Well,
let's start very, very high level from a political perspective. And I'm not going to get political. I'm just going to look at the lay of the land. We are wrestling with really difficult, serious problems arising from availability of energy, right? This is very much linked to, this is the reason, at least the topic we're talking about today. That puts society, business and government and the energy sector, on the same front line, okay? If we're able to reduce some of the intensity of our energy demand, it will dramatically, if we do it at scale, it will dramatically improve a number of factors. It will dramatically, you asked about benefits, it will dramatically improve energy security. Mm-hmm. It will significantly reduce pressure on energy pricing because, intense problems around availability and demand for energy, which is crazy if we're wasting so much of it. But intense demand is pushing up prices and is having a significant impact on the cost of living. So it's hurting the consumer extremely badly. So energy security, cost, climate. Now, last year, up until December, so many of us were focused on COP26 and climate. In fact, my first note that I wrote this year was for the Atlantic Council on energy efficiency, and I gave 3 reasons you should do energy efficiency, but the first one was energy security.
Yes.
It improves your energy security, it cuts your costs and improves your productivity, going back to what I said before about commercial sustainability. And the bottom line is that it reduces carbon, it reduces pollution. And so it is a fantastic outcome from a climate change mitigation perspective. When I say it's the bottom line, energy efficiency is the cheapest, largest source of greenhouse gas emission reductions. It's the energy that you don't use. And I'll say something else controversial. I don't know if you'll pull or push the button.
We'll see.
There is no such thing as zero carbon energy generation.
Say that again, because that was controversial.
There is no such thing as zero carbon energy generation. It can be low carbon, but it's not zero carbon, right? But actually, if you think about it, taking energy out of the economy, taking the energy that you're wasting and stopping wasting that means that you don't need to generate that energy in the first place. Uh-huh. Taking that energy out is zero carbon. In fact, it's negative carbon. We can actually reduce our carbon footprint by focusing on cutting waste. So I would say, you asked me about the benefits, energy security, cost reductions, improvements in productivity at both corporate and national level. And it has a massive implication for climate finance and climate delivery and climate action, because this is one of the first things that we need to look at. This is where there are gigatons of carbon emission reductions, as well as other pollution prevention benefits.
Wow. So in that case, when I ask you the question, if we do all this, do you believe that we will be carbon neutral by 2050? Do you think that goal is actually possible?
I think we're right in the middle of lots of definitions around what people mean by carbon neutral and net zero. So again, not to be too controversial, but I'm going to acknowledge that first of all. I think that through a combination of demand reduction, cleaner energy generation, much cleaner energy generation, but we have to do these things in conjunction with other factors that actually take carbon out of the economy. I believe that energy efficiency can take carbon out of the economy and out of the atmosphere, but there are other things that we're going to need to do. We're going to need to think about our agricultural practices. We're going to need to think about afforestation and think about how we manage natural sequestration. And we're going to need to think about some other forms of carbon capture utilization. So I think it's going to take an enormous amount of focus. If we don't cut the waste, if we don't reduce the waste generally, whether it's in energy or food or other resources, if we're not resource efficient, going back to my definition of sustainable development, if we're not resource efficient, we're not actually, I don't think, capable of getting onto a sustainable development pathway. However, if we can be more resource efficient, then we can reduce the job that has to be done by taking carbon out of the atmosphere. And it's that last piece of it, which is critical to carbon neutrality or net zero, is actually finding some way of not just removing, but also reducing overall, and even offsetting carbon generation. It's a huge problem. And 2050 is an aggressive time frame. 28 years is aggressive. And it's aggressive, sadly, in the context of the fact that some of the fossil fuel components that we're looking at are going to go up rather than down in the short term. I'm afraid my fear is energy security concerns are going to push certain countries in Europe more onto coal. So I think we're going to go backwards in the short run. I think there's been a big debate on another controversial statement on the role that certain fuels have to play in the decarbonisation transition. There was kind of no gas a couple of years ago. I think people are having to think that gas is at least better than coal today. So we're going to have to see some transition come into the system. 28 years is very rapid. Is it possible? I believe so. But I think we have to do all of these things. And it's definitely not possible. One thing I will say, definitely not possible if we're not resource efficient and we're not energy efficient. The European Commission has said already there is no way of meeting 2030 carbon emission goals. They're not net zero, but even the 2030 carbon emission goals, reduction goals, cannot be achieved without energy efficiency. That's what goes behind the post-COVID recovery plan and the buildings renovation scheme.
We were usually prepare a question of disruption and a pitch of your choice, but I think that you basically put them into this conversation already. You got fired up and I love it. I just want to make sure that we bring you back to SDCL's role in this. Yeah. So where do you fit into this? What do you hope to achieve?
Yeah. So what we're doing is creating an investment platform and a means through which investors, whether we got two vehicles listed on stock exchanges, one in London, one in New York, and also we have private investment vehicles. We want to be a conduit through which investors can identify opportunities in this market. And we want to create those opportunities as sustainable, attractive, long-term financial investments. And by playing that role, we can act as a conduit between the capital market and the end product, in other words, the energy efficiency projects. And we want to be a significant enabler and accelerator. We want to be able to be a real interface between the capital market and the energy efficiency solutions and projects. That's one element, which is financial. The other element to us, which is more industrial, is, and this is the other half of my day, is talking to end users of energy. Built in the industrial sector, steel, cement, chemicals, and plastics responsible for as much greenhouse gas emissions as the power sector. Buildings, transport. Talking to these industries and then working with our teams, with our in-house teams, with our utility partners, our equipment providers, and manufacturers, working with those end customers to figure out how we can develop solutions to their problems. So there are sort of fundamentally two things we're doing. It's enabling investment from capital markets on the one hand, and on the other hand, it's developing projects and solutions for the end customer. And what we can do as an organization is bring these two things together, mobilize the capital, work to identify the problems and the solutions, and then put the two together. And what we want to be able to do, and what we've been able to I'm very grateful to our investors. What we've been able to do so far is mobilize hundreds of millions of dollars, in fact, now even billions of dollars in measurement of capital into projects like this. What needs to happen is that this scales up very, very dramatically. So for the reasons that we've discussed, it is a major opportunity to solve these problems. And that opportunity, the total addressable market, runs into many tens, hundreds of billions of dollars. And that's a very important part of the clean energy future and your switch.
Definitely. My question I wanted to pose to you was, has the energy system that we have today failed the world? And you basically answered me that that is correct. It has failed the world. And what SDCL is doing is try to restore it. Did I understand you correct?
I would land there. I would give the energy system a lot more credit for, thank you for saying that. But I think just to give the energy system more credit, energy, going back over the last 200 or 300 years, has been maybe the enabler for industrial human progress, for everything from productivity to healthcare. And it remains so. I don't think we can deprive, whether it's individuals in the developed or the developing world, with energy. That it's a key enabler of life and human life anyway, and security. So I think it's very dangerous for us to say, you shouldn't you shouldn't make energy available, the energy system. What we need to do, having said that, is make it so much more efficient. I think the way in which it's been developed in Sweden is an extraordinary place, but whether it's the way it's extraordinarily good, but the way it's been developed as a marketplace in most industrial economies needs to be dramatically changed now for all of the reasons that I described: security, cost, and carbon. These are major catalysts. If at this point and over the next 5 or 10 years we don't make that system more efficient, absolutely we are failing nation states, we're failing companies, we're failing people, because it's going to be very bad for energy security and availability. It's going to be very bad for carbon and pollution, and ultimately, it's going to be very bad also for environment and economy.
Wow, those are kind of like that's a very heavy statement that you're saying right now. But I think it's important, and it's what we usually say here, it's an uncomfortable conversation that we need to have in order to start finding the solutions to it. If we try to start summarizing in a sense, what would you say would be your message to the audience we have who's listening now? We have investors, we have developers, we have early stage companies, and we have scale-ups who are listening and trying to get information. What would you say to them at this point? What's your 3 best advices?
I don't know about the 3, but what I would say is that, I think we know that there are a huge number of opportunities and solutions associated with efficient and decentralized generation of energy. So my first point, I think, would be for every pound we collectively invest in renewable and clean energy generation solutions, let's invest €1 in energy efficiency and decentralized energy solutions. Let's make sure that when the clean energy arrives at scale, it's not wasted. But I also think that in order to get there, that's kind of the objective. There are things that we need to do along that road, and one of those is articulate, making sure that we try and find this will happen ground up, because actually so much of it is actually cheaper, cleaner, and more reliable than the grid. But top down, I think we do need to have a discussion, more serious discussion with government, with regulators, about making sure that we don't waste so much energy in the economy. And I think the last sort of uncomfortable thing that we need to do to get to that point is make sure that governments themselves don't waste so much energy. The hospitals, the schools, the universities, the defence organisations. These are the major energy users. So there's a lot to do. But I'm massively optimistic, coming back to the beginning of this. What the reason is, I'm not talking about solutions that require, we want to support innovation. We want to back new things that could be there in 5 or 10 years' time to change the world. But most of what I'm talking about is deliverable with today's technology, and today's technology that's also not just commercially proven, but financially sustainable. And it's hugely exciting. It needs a different it needs a different mindset. But with the right mindset, I think we've got a huge opportunity ahead of us, and I'm very optimistic.
Going back to your first statement, if it's not commercial, it's not sustainable. I think you just summarized that again. Definitely. Listen, I'm not going to let you get away. Everybody gets the same question, so don't try to sneak out of it. I need to get you to answer one of 3 questions. What have you done to the climate this week? Or have you seen anything bad done to the climate? Or do you have any guilty pleasures?
Now it's time for conscious questions.
This isn't a guilty pleasure, but I drive an electric car, and since I've had an electric car, one of the extraordinary things I discovered was how many more miles I get out of my car if I turn off the air conditioning.
Oh, so the air conditioning is actually the guilty pleasure.
It's amazing. I can only give you my car. This isn't a scientific thing, but my car, when I charge it fully, goes 255 miles with the air conditioning off, or 215 miles with the air conditioning on. I live in central London, and I couldn't tell you. You can't feel it if your air conditioning's on. But how amazing that so much energy is wasted from something that has so little impact on your day-to-day life. So I bore people senselessly and all the time, and I don't mind about this fact. And what I did for the planet, I went out for dinner last night and bored everybody at the table about this one thing. But it just gives an idea. If you can cut energy use by 15-20% with no sacrifice of your individual comfort, by doing something as simple as changing the application inside your device, then I think it's a great thing to do. I think it's a good thing for the planet. Personally, my guilty pleasure that I don't really talk to other people about because it's slightly embarrassing is
it's okay. It's just between you and me, so you can be completely honest.
Yeah. So I spend a lot of time researching heavily where I'm going to stay if I have to go on site or go and visit one of our projects or other offices. So I do a lot of research around hotels, and I spend a lot of time fussing about and worrying about their carbon footprint and environmental practices. So I probably spend way too much time than my investors or shareholders would like researching hotels, and that's but having said that, I think there are some good groups out there that have got great ideas.
Maybe you have some good tips on sustainable hotels then.
Exactly, and even this is the bit you mustn't tell anybody. I often go and talk to the hotel managers about what they might be doing.
I think that you said it a bit earlier. What you do to make the world better is to make sure you nag everybody about all your knowledge that you do have.
Yeah, so
which I think is amazing.
Spectacularly boring is what we have to do.
Or spectacularly important, I would add to that. Honestly, Jonathan, it has been a pleasure to talk to you. You are full of experience and knowledge, and I hope that many of our listeners really listen into what can be done. I really engage into the conversation that there is so much to be done with what we already have. Sometimes we're looking too much forward and trying to find new solutions when what we can actually make a big difference is at just standing in front of our feet. So thank you very much for informing us and educating us about this subject, definitely. Listen, my sunshine goes to you for that one. Now you have a chance to give someone else a sunshine. Who would you like to give attention and to make sure that we shed our light on?
Sunshine.
I'm going to say this from the heart. It really is not a political statement at all, but I studied history at university, so I spent a lot of time thinking about people and people that make a difference, and that stand behind their convictions and that are brave. So I would like to shine a light, as lots of people are deservedly, on President Zelensky for his position that he's taken, and I think intense personal bravery. I think that just on the energy side, beyond the personality and the tragedy of what's going on and the politics and humanity and everything else, what I would say is that under the surface of this is not just an energy security crisis for Europe, But I think it brings back how important energy is in the world and geopolitics. Ukraine has 1.1 trillion cubic meters of natural gas compared to about 1.5 trillion cubic meters in Norway. So let's just think about that when we think about resources, how important they are, and remember that people very often fight over them. Anyway, my light back over to President Zelensky for his heroism.
I would like to agree with you. I think that you summarized that in a very good way, and as well, a very important discussion to be had. As I said, for me, it's been a pleasure. I'm going to bring so much with me moving forward. What do you bring with you from today's conversations?
I bring with me, I think, I need to remind myself how some of what we have to say seems incredibly obvious, but some of it seems so counterintuitive. So I shall go away and make sure that we get our story right, so people don't think we're mad and push the bullshit button too early, and instead we articulate our case so that they pull the awesome button beforehand.
Well, you did that very well today. You're getting the awesome button from me, definitely. Thank you from the bottom of our heart. And if you want to make sure that you are part of the switch, make sure to put pressure on the people around you that can make a better energy sufficiency, and also make good choices yourself. You heard it. What about that air condition? Thank you for switching on today and listening to Jonathan from SDCL.